LeaderShift, transforming how we see, think, and lead. What is LeaderShift? The most dangerous thing for a leader is not failure, but stagnation. Continuing to see people, problems, and possibilities through an outdated lens, or mindset. Therefore, LeaderShift is a transformative process that redefines how leaders see, think, and lead. It is not simply a strategy, it is a perspective shift that unlocks influence, resilience, and growth in every sphere of leadership. LeaderShift is an intentional change of perspective that transforms how leaders see, think, and lead. It's an internal pivot where duty becomes destiny, and what once felt like obligation now carries galvanized purpose. Reaction becomes reflection. Leaders no longer respond in anger or impulse, but in wisdom. Where transactions becomes transformation. Instead of managing processes, leaders begin to purposely shape people. At its core, LeaderShift is a mindset movement. It challenges leaders to step beyond tradition, routine, and comfort zones into fresh vision and courageous adaptability. LeaderShift is not about changing what you do first, it's about developing new perspectives, or how we see and think. LeaderShift is best understood through the three ethnos leadership pillars of character, capabilities, and competencies. Character, from position to integrity. Without LeaderShift, character can become rigid. Where many leaders depend on titles, ranks, or positions. But through LeaderShift, authentic character shifts from position to dependable and credible integrity. Capabilities, from planning to adaptability. Without LeaderShift, capabilities collapse when the plan fails. With LeaderShift, capabilities shift from rigid execution to adaptive action. Captain Chesley Sullenberger adapted to his circumstances, or practiced a LeaderShift when on January 15, 2009, landed U.S. Airways Flight 1549 safely on the Hudson River, saving all 155 passengers on board. General Colin Powell simplified complex doctrine into clear execution, while serving as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff from October 1, 1989, to September 30, 1993. A valuable ally to the LeaderShift concept is embedded in the leadership philosophy of General Powell. Leadership is solving problems. The day soldiers stop bringing you their problems is the day you have stopped leading them. They have either lost confidence that you can help them, or concluded you do not care. Either case is a failure of leadership. As a means of mitigating, or solving problems, the iceberg metaphor provides additional understanding of a leader's daily challenges. On top of the iceberg of leadership, our titles, positions, policies and procedures are what others see on the surface daily. However, what we don't see underneath the surface, or below the water line, are the challenges, or the problems that leaders may not be aware of. Challenges or problems such as lack of trust and credibility, poor communication, lack of accountability, emotional and mental exhaustion, burnout, and isolation. The preceding examples, among others, underneath the surface of our leadership, are symptoms that can sink an organization. History tells us that on the day that the Titanic sank on April 15, 1912, the crew only saw 10% of the iceberg, or the tip. However, it wasn't the tip, or the surface of the iceberg that sank the Titanic. It was the other 90%, beneath the surface, that sank the ship. As a leader, Bill Gates adapted vision, a LeaderShift, into solutions before the world knew it needed them. Solutions like the Microsoft software, and the Windows operating system, which enabled widespread adoption and ownership of personal computers. LeaderShift insight. Adaptability is leadership's sharpest edge, the true summit of capability. General Colin Powell led with wisdom under fire. Captain Sullenberger transformed panic into precision. Bill Gates scaled ideas into global change. In other words, these three leaders show us that LeaderShift is adaptability in motion. Competencies, from perfection to progression. Without LeaderShift, competencies stagnate. With LeaderShift, they shift from the illusion of perfection to the discipline of progression. George Washington grew from repeated defeats into disciplined mastery that carried a revolution. In the LeaderShift concept, competency is not about flawless moments, but about faithful, progressive, personal and organizational growth. Why LeaderShift matters now. Every generation faces unique challenges. Military leaders face the reality of war, corporate leaders face the storm of innovation, and family leaders face the pressures of culture. What they all have in common is this: yesterday's perspective is not enough for today's problems or challenges. LeaderShift is the bridge between old lenses and new clarity, rigid structure, and adaptive influence, and short-term wins, and generational legacy. When leaders embrace the principle of LeaderShift, they no longer see obstacles, but they see opportunities. They no longer see problems as permanent, but as possibilities. They no longer see influence as power over others, but as power for others. LeaderShift is not optional, it is essential. The world is moving fast. Leaders who refuse to shift perspective will become irrelevant. Leaders who embrace LeaderShift will become transformational. LeaderShift becomes truly transformational when it's rooted in the ethnos equation, a framework built on purposeful relationships that are valued, trusted, and respected. These relationships aren't transactional. They're intentional. And they serve as the bridge to authentic accountability, which is reliable, dependable, and affirmational. Together, these two pillars lead to the ultimate call of leadership, professional responsibility, to grow and develop those we lead, not just professionally, but socially, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. The ethnos equation isn't just another model of leadership. It is the bedrock of LeaderShift, and the heartbeat of transformational leadership. The LeaderShift equation means that character shifts from simply position or title to authentic integrity. Capabilities shift from planning to practiced adaptability. Competencies shift from perfection to understanding the need of progression. The practice of the principle of LeaderShift and the fusion of character, capabilities, and competencies unleashes influence that ignites transformation and multiplies outcomes far beyond the moment, becoming a part of a leader's heritage and legacy perpetually. For more information, send us an email at contact@ethnosleadership.com. LeaderShift, transforming how we see, think, and lead.